The cognitive revolution started 70,000 years ago, and it was the first time in human history that people had the ability to imagine things that did not exist, which is the definition of imagine, right? I don't need to imagine books. They're right here. Once it exists, it's there. Like monkeys don't build pyramids out of their poop because they've never seen a pyramid before. We came up with a pyramid, right? And the Egyptians built it. And so as soon as they could imagine things that could not exist, what do you think they would start to imagine first? What's the first thing that a guy might imagine if he's out fighting all the time?
Power. Like something that could give them power.
No, but some people had power before.
Mm-hmm.
Like there was the alpha male before. The existence of alpha males goes back millions of years. The social hierarchy goes back at least 3 million years with like lobsters. That's the whole Jordan Peterson lobster talk. What's something else? What's something that we imagine that scares humans to this day?
Death.
Death. Death. Monkeys don't know they're going to die. Dogs don't know they're going to die. Birds aren't flying through the air and they're all of a sudden they're like, oh my goodness, I almost got hit by, what if I could have died? Ah! And like passes out. Just passes out
if you think about it that way. Yeah.
They don't, so they can't imagine death because death doesn't exist for them yet. And so that was the beginning of people imagining that they could die. It happened 70,000 years ago, roughly. That was when our brains evolved to a point that we had that ability to imagine. Something about the evolution of neural networks, right? So if it happened to a dude and the alpha male says, all right, it's time to go attack those mammoths, right? Or whatever, then all of a sudden, like, there's one of those guys that's like, I don't know if I want to go.
I'm afraid I might die.
I'm going to go pick berries with the girls. Is that cool? It's like, no, you got to go. They're going to be terrified. The rest of the guys are going to be looking at that guy like, what's wrong with that guy? Well, he's imagining the potential of death. So he probably just got ostracized from society because he probably like crapped his pants, you know? But if it happened to a woman first, and it happened to somebody first, this ability, this like kind of like new age evolution, what do you think women did with the ability to imagine? Keep in mind, this is like, we were basically animals at the time. And a lot of what drove evolutionary biology was just having children and making sure that the children didn't die before they could have children. And so a big part of this was attracting the alpha male, because if you didn't have the attraction of the alpha male, then you didn't get very good food. You weren't very well taken care of.
Makeup.
That's when we were talking. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
Imagine that you're the first woman that has the ability to imagine, and you've got like some
perfect image of yourself, kind of.
You might like braid your hair for the first time.
Yeah.
Put
some berry juice on your lips.
Put some berry juice on your lips. You know, maybe you've got some way of like coming up with tattoos. Maybe you got some feathers. You just start like putting some feathers around in your hair, and you're like, "Hey, what's up?" Right, and at that point, of course, you're going to stand out. To this day, women are doing really strange things to try to stand out and look different to get the attraction of men. And by strange, I mean they like walk around on stilts. Right? What are they called again?
High heels.
High heels.
High heels.
There's no practical reason for doing this. It's a way to try to. Now you're taller than the other ladies, right? The other ladies are here, and you're like here, right? So you're.
It's so hard to walk in those. I'm not even. It's
right. They have pockets in their pants that are sewed shut. They aren't functional. This is purely to try, right?
Yeah.
The all the things and the eyelashes and the really long fingernails that make it so you can't use your phone without tapping and driving everybody crazy. All these things, right? Meant to try to attract. This has been going on for 70,000 years. They didn't do that. Monkeys don't do this. You don't see like one female monkey over there, you know, that like found some way to put feathers in their hair to be like, look at me, ooh, ooh, ah, ah. Right? Because they can't imagine But as soon as the other,
which is also why we think there are makeup trends, because once the first lady puts some berry juice on her lips, it's no longer new, and then the other monkeys can look at it. Why they have to keep coming up with new things.
New things.
evolution,
To give them benefits.
that's a cultural evolution in the whole fight to try to get attention, right? And so the we think it started with that. But so anyway, the point is that before the cognitive revolution, humans were stuck within the same construct as animals, where you can't have trust unless you knew someone personally. And so tribes couldn't grow beyond 50 to 100 people. There's a well-documented just social mammal barrier. And this barrier was broken roughly 70,000 years ago. That was also the beginning of the mass extinction of large mammals across the planet, was because that's when we also imagined the idea of making a boat. So boats were created because we saw that wood floated. And so we could imagine, well, what if we put a lot of these together? And then all of a sudden you had, Madagascar, the marsupials across Indonesia, Australia, right? This was the beginning of this mass extinction. It started 70,000 years ago. It's one way that we track it, right? But what did we do to try to grow beyond 50 to 100 people? Because that's a huge, if you got 10,000, you're just going to steamroll over everybody else, right? So how do you do it? Shared myths, shared cultural practices, tattoos, the way that we would wear feathers, the way that people would paint themselves a certain way. A lot of it was visual. It's the root cause of racism. If you think of why are people still racist? Racism is not very helpful. If you're going to judge people based on how they look, especially skin color, it's so stupid, right? You're only hurting yourself. But why do people do it? Well, part of it is because we're ingrained now at this point very deeply, going back forever, to see something and decide, is this a threat? And we learn how to perceive certain cultural practices like tattoos as a way of, why would people put tattoos on their face? There are tribes in Africa that still like putting tattoos on your face is something they still do. Or the women had these huge earrings here, right? It's a way of saying, oh, this person's in my tribe, right? Or those rings around the neck that extend the neck. Talk about crazy things that girls do to get attention. That's one of them. They're some of them die. If they take the rings out from their extended necks, they die. Right? That's how crazy some of this stuff is, in my opinion. It's kind of off the wall. But there's reasons why they do it. Now I understand why. So anyway, we came up with this ability. And that was when you started to see people destroying people. That was the beginning of we had been doing this before, but I think that was probably the end of the Neanderthals at that point. That was when Homo sapiens just destroyed the rest of the Neanderthals if they were still around. And you started to see the if you didn't evolve to that, then you were gone. If you were stuck in the old age and you couldn't use this new cognitive tool, you were destroyed by those that could, right? So this is our whole ancestry, is to have visual cues, largely visual, although some of the storytelling is the root cause of religions, right? There's all these different stories that we say, that we tell each other, and money is a religion too. Money doesn't technically, God can exist. I'm not saying that God doesn't exist, but there's Zeus, there's all these myths, right? Where did they come from? Why do we do them? Well, because if somebody could say the story, you knew they were in your tribe. It's very, very important, very, very powerful, right? Okay, so now comes the birth of technology and true, I would say technology. What I mean by that is digital technology, zero cost scaling software. Zero cost scaling is something that is fundamentally new. It's completely changed the game in terms of risk taking. People were not risk taking. We have been predispositioned to not be risk taking forever. It's why all the news is covered by negativity. There's just negativity everywhere. Why do we feel a little bit of happiness when something unexpectedly good happens, and terrible amounts of sadness when something unexpectedly bad happens? I think we lost a camera once that cost us like $1,000, and we were just like, oh my god. My grandmother gave us like $3,000 for Christmas or something, and we were like, oh, that's nice. And then the next day I was like, can you believe we just did this? We were like obsessing for like a week. We're like, I can't believe we lost our camera. And then we get the check in the mail from grandma. And it was like, oh, thanks, grandma. Like, we have been hardwired to try to perceive risks and avoid death so we can have sex and make a baby and then raise them to a point that they can have another baby, right? That's the way our brains are wired. We are not wired for innovation. What happened to the gal or guy that was like, hey, we should go explore and find a better cave? Like, well, I don't know. You go into the cave and maybe there's a bear and then you die. That's why.
Yeah.
Wandering into new caves, even if it is a better cave. And is it very important to have a better cave? No. Like, but now it is. You build a better app, all of a sudden it's like you could scale the world. You have a new idea, you have some new breakthrough, and it's just like boom, all of a sudden it's like everything's better. It's just so cool. But we're hardwired not to take risks. We're hardwired to perceive threats. So we live in that world. And now the need, the value of being the individual, of seizing those unique strengths and interests and using your passions to fuel you to find opportunities and solutions that you're uniquely empowered to solve goes directly against the way that human beings have been thinking since the dawn of time. So we're trying to go against this, but you need to understand the threat. The threat is the matrix, right? The threat is the matrix. You got to imagine Morpheus walking Neo through that one training simulation, and they're playing this on. You know, it's like really, really cool. You know, everybody's dressed in black, and they're all waiting for everybody to cross the street, and they all got their briefcases, and they're ready to go. And then Neo turns around, and the agent's just like, freeze. Morpheus says freeze. And he's like, this isn't the Matrix? He's like, no, this is a training simulation meant to teach you one thing, that until we free the minds of everyone in the Matrix is potentially a threat.
Look again. Freeze it.
This isn't the Matrix.
No. It's another training program designed to teach you one thing. If you are not one of us, you are one of them.
What are they?
Sentient programs. They can move in and out of any software still hardwired to their system. That means that anyone we haven't unplugged is potentially an agent. Inside the Matrix, they are everyone, and they are no one.
We have survived by hiding from them.
The agents in the Matrix are precedent thinking, social norms that are not built on first principles, ideas that are meant to turn people into batteries, which are not unique. People are not batteries. But that's a lot of what this was meant to do, because 70,000 years ago, when tribes started to grow, all you needed to grow was for people to act like batteries. You needed all the batteries laid out, and they all had to be the same, just like in a Tesla. They all had to be laid out and exactly the same so they could all work together. Otherwise, they were going to die. Because the folks that didn't learn how to do that, they're gone. If you didn't have this trait, your genes were not passed on. And then we ended up doing a lot of the same thing with the Industrial Revolution. Training people to be batteries, to work alongside everybody else, right? So that's what we're up against here. We're trying to say, look, going forward, the new way to create value requires going very much against a lot of this. And so how do we do it? We have to train people to understand, accept, love, and appreciate who they are. That's step one. None of these platforms do that. These platforms are not built to make it difficult to get on the platform. Like when you start Twitter, you don't need to hardly do anything, right? That way you get a lot of people that just join. They can immediately start saying random stuff to each other. We want that barrier to entry. We want that barrier to entry. We want people to get into it and have the first impression that they have from the app be something that makes them feel good about themselves and also helps other people feel good about them, which is really hard if you're not walking up to like say a Trump supporter and you're saying, "Hi, Trump's amazing. How are you?" Like, and then they're going to like you. That's easy, right? Or some other political view. Or, "Hi, I'm Mormon. You are too. We're best friends now. Yay." Right? Right? All those things. "Oh, hey, you're a pretty girl in high school. Me too. Look, we wear the same clothes. Yay. We're affirming that we're both the same tribe. Yay. Look, we feel good about each other. Yay, because we're just in an echo chamber." That's how a lot of this, that's how that works, right? It's very easy to do. You just look the same, act the same, say the same things, and then you can instantly have this community, right? We're trying to do the opposite. We're trying to build a community out of individuality. Yeah, that's hard. It's really hard. But it's totally possible. I'm getting very good at it. I'm getting very good at finding those people and building the mental models to make it possible, like thinking about shame versus guilt. Remember that discussion?
Yeah.
One of these heuristics that you can use to try to identify who do you want in the tribe, right? Who do you want in the tribe? People that have individuality, they have their own unique values. They're not just constantly looking outside themselves for affirmation. That's shame, right? So we can do it. But now in 2023, we have to think. Oh, do we have to think? We have to think long and hard about how do we build an about me tool that helps people onboard into a platform that is easy to do. They have to be able to do this in less than 60 seconds. And then it has to give them something that they can really feel good about themselves. That's the metric. We could just go around to random people in your hometown, say, "Hey, can you try this for me? Go ahead, you just download this. Just fill out this tool. It's going to have a few questions. It prompts you. If you don't like the question, just swipe, go to the next question, answer the questions that you want. You got to personalize that too. And then make it so that they can click things instead of writing things if possible, right? Maybe we also use some other information like their geolocation so that they don't have to actually type in where they're from. That would be cool. So that way, but it still puts it in the article, right? And then it spits out something about them. It's them. It's speaking to them. And it's just the beginning, because the more they engage with the app, the more they're going to start to build and understand their specific knowledge, which is going to be the path that helps them make money like breathing, like Isla. Oh man, is she making bank? She understands herself really well. She's not trying to be her big sister. And her big sister is not threatened by her, and she's not threatened by her big sister just because she does different things. Right? They know they're in the same tribe. Because their tribe is built on shared principles and values, not shared myths and little visual cues or some social hierarchy. That's all BS. That's all the matrix. Got to get that out so we can focus. We can do it. It's going to be fun. It's an exciting time. Oh man, if Morpheus is right about you. Oh.
I'm fairly excited to see what you're capable of. If Morpheus is right now. If you are. Very exciting time.
This is going to be fun. We got a lot to do.
And share this recording with me, Joe. Like, this was a really great conversation.
Jiu-jitsu? He's a machine. He's been going at this for 10 hours straight. That's what happens. That's what happens. When you start to figure out who you are because you actually want to know the things that you're able to do. Did you watch Peaceful Warrior Potters?
No.
When he's in the shower, because this is the first time that he starts to use this. taking what Socrates told him about freeing his mind using this, and he's getting ready to go up on the high horse, and he never does this. And he goes in there, and he was just flawless. Then he becomes arrogant, and he's like, "Dude, I did what I clear my mind, I was flawless. I just destroyed this other guy," and immediately got into like a social hierarchy game and just ruined it. And he was gone mentally. And Socrates is like, "You haven't learned anything. Get out of here."
Yeah.
It's the same idea though. Like that's the concept. It's people don't know. They just don't know. They don't know that you're this fish in the water. But if you fly out, you actually, just like Neo, like Neo's like looking at Morpheus like, "Oh yeah, are you telling me I can dodge bullets?" And Morpheus is like, "No, I'm telling you that when you're ready, you won't have to."
Yeah.
You'll realize you get to reshape the structure of the game how you want. Once you realize that the water, the matrix, the culturally driven paradigms that have no foundation in first principles, once you realize that you get to construct that for yourself, it's like Neo when he stops the bullets. It's very, very powerful. It's really fun too. It's like really, really fun. Because you'll stop being upset with other people when they do things like reject you. Or if something doesn't work out. Or like just a lot of those things that upset people just frankly won't.
Takes away a lot of suffering.
You can, but it's just because it's kind of like one other example, and then I'll stop here shortly. But it's just so interesting. It's so exciting. But like take the road rager. You know, like you're driving down the road, and you see some road rager. And some people get, and I did when I was in my 20s, somebody would drive by at like 90 miles an hour, flick me off as they're going, whatever. And I'd just be like, because what are they doing? What are they implying? It's another one of these shared myths, this idea of the social hierarchy. It's a social construct. He's trying to say, I'm better than you. Get out of my way. I'm faster than you. Too fast, too furious. You know, like, and nobody, especially guys, they don't want to be around that. And then if you go through this thought process and you see them, and then especially if you're like these truckers, they don't do that. Truckers don't respond to road ragers. They've seen tens of thousands of them. They've changed their paradigm. They don't see some idiot that's, you know, not doing anything. Like, they're not threatening unless you allow them to be, right? And so they just see them and they go, oh, well, I hope they don't. And you start to feel empathy for people like that. You start to be like, I really hope they don't hurt themselves, you know? And you can do the same. The same thing happens. And if they're, especially young men, they'll be like all obsessed with their careers. They'll be like, oh yeah, well, I had a big deal, new client. All this work, had to make all this money. Oh, so challenging, my life, so hard. You know, I did that a few times. I'm sure I annoyed a few people. And if you have the wrong paradigm, you look at that and you'll just be like, you kind of hate them because you kind of are jealous of them, and you're kind of like, oh, I wish I had a client and all that stuff. And you're like want to be friends with them so you can learn from them because apparently they know something you don't. And then the other way is you'll see them and you'll see that they have no freedom. They have no freedom. They're a slave to trying to project their betterness, or
Perfect
a slave
image.
to money, or a slave to whatever. Because if they were truly in the here and now, they'd be playing with the kids instead of talking about how hard their life is from making all this money or whatever. You can tell the people that are kind of beyond that. So you just start to have empathy for them, and you can just listen to them and let them tell their story. And you're just like, oh, that's great. Good for you. Well, that's great. While you're playing, you know, and just And at some point they'll wonder why they'll be like, so have I convinced you that I'm better than you yet? Right? Have you submitted to my awesomeness? Like in the back of their minds, they're trying to wait for you to give the signal that they've succeeded in showing that they're better than you. But instead you're just sort of like, brush your shoulders off, brush your shoulders off. Like you're not construct. They're just living inside their little mythological, whatever. They've got their story they want to tell. You just love them by letting them tell their story to make them feel good. It's fine.
My God, Joe, I just hope someday comes and you're on the TED Talk. That will be awesome.
Well, let's nail it, baby. Woo! All right. Yeah, let's free some minds, people. Bye.
Bye.